Yes, can you see?
You were saying something, Raj?
I'm just wondering if you guys can hear me.
There is an echo if you unmute yourself on the other device. I think the device you were on before is fine.
I think now it should be fine. Thanks.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We are just waiting for a couple of minutes before we begin. I think we can get started. 3, 2, and we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for choosing to spend your 1 hour of your coffee time with us. We promise to not disappoint you. We have an exciting panel. They are as exciting as me right now because I've heard them speaking. So they're all very energetic and they're ready to talk to you. So I'll quickly introduce everybody and then I'll hand it over to the anchor of the session. So I have with me Kusum Makija. Kusum is Vice President, Branding Communications and CSR at DBS Bank. And then I have Subendu Patnaik. Subendu is the Vice President, Global Head of Marketing for Signity Technologies. We have Meenu Bagla from Cyient. She leads the Chief Marketing Office for Cyient. And then Rosh Ferraro, he is the Global Vice President for Virtusa, and he also handles the corporate marketing. So Kusum, I'll hand it over to you. And if you have any questions, I'll be on video. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm quite excited to be on the panel, like you rightly mentioned. It's actually quite interesting to connect with fellow communications professional. But before we start, I think I'll probably just do some bit of context setting. And I'm sure all of us on the call today, on the webinar today, have experienced similar challenges over the last 18 months of the pandemic. You know, the initial euphoria of being able to work from home, getting that me time, and then, gradually sort of getting bored with too much work or the lines between the work-life balance getting blurred. And then eventually now, where we often hear colleagues, suffering from FOMO of, being back to work. And some of them, unfortunately, also we've seen, have sort of experienced some, mental well-being issues in terms of not being able to cope up with the stress of working from home and so on. So it's been a roller coaster ride for all of us. And I think amidst all of this, the role of communications professional has actually never been so pivotal. So while all of this is happening and we've been on our toes last year and a half in terms of keeping the employees informed, keeping them engaged, ensuring that all our deliverables and carries are met. And now with, recently with all this, the talent war that's been, seen among the GICs in the fintech space, we're also seeing there's a lot of pressure on employer branding, a lot of focus, in fact, on employer branding. Well, not all is grim. The good part is that we're getting the attention that was well-deserved. The internal communications function has become an important one. I think some of us have also seen that our budgets have gone up and we're getting more headcount to support us. So that's probably the positive side of it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the boundaries are getting blurred, and I'm not the only one who's probably experienced that. In fact, I'm glad that my fellow, panelists here, when we connected offline before this, also echoed same sentiments in terms of, similar kind of challenges that they're sort of facing. So thank you, Rosh, Meenu, and Subendu for joining us today. I'll probably start with Meenu to understand how, we just sort of briefly touched upon this whole employer branding focus. How do you think you've managed to keep your employer brand relevant during this time? Any interesting campaigns or initiatives that you launched? And also, when you touch upon that, do spend some time, enlightening us on what's in store in terms of the new normal. Because I think while the pandemic is hopefully behind us now, it's time for us to now focus on the new normal, the new way of working, the hybrid environment that we all operate in. So, if you could spend some time talking about the whole employer branding piece from a science perspective. That would be great.
First and foremost, thank you, NASCOM team, for inviting me to this enriching discussion. And Kusum, thank you for posing that question. Let me step back and say that if you ask me, how much did we focus on employer brand in the last 18 months? I did not. I don't think so. The focus was on employer brand at all. There are only two things that we focused on during the entire pandemic: is our people and the purpose, right? And I think branding takes care of itself. One of my early on mentors have taught that brand is not what you put out there. Brand is what you leave behind when you walk outside and what people talk about you and your purpose, right? So I would say that is what we focused on when we talk about employer brand in the last 18 months. You talked about the initiatives or the campaigns or the programs. Hand to my heart, Kusum, we were not even thinking about campaigns and programs, right? Our sole purpose during the first 15 months was to take care of our people's financial, physical, mental, social, holistic well-being, right? If that meant we need to convince government, we need to convince our customers, we need to convince our partners, we need to convince our vendors, we did all that. And more importantly, the effect of that was our own associates, our own science employees came forward to reach out to community. And I think that's the most beautiful example of employer branding than any campaign, right? And it is only in retrospect when we were doing this that we call this entire effort, rightly so, in this together. We call this entire effort as hashtag in this together, where it was not just about we offering help to our associates. I have no qualms in accepting that we asked for help from our associates. There were so many instances when our associates went out of their comfort zone and helped out others, not just from our own organization, from other organization, but larger community, right from food and shelter and medicine and vaccination and remdesivir. I mean, if you ask me, that was the focus. The focus was not employer brand at all, so as to say. So that's to me is employer brand, is to stay true to your purpose, to your values, and to your people, right? And be absolutely authentic and meaningful about it. To your second question, Kusum, that you posed, which is what's the new normal looking like, right? Interestingly, every day is a new normal now, right? Every day is a new revelation. Every day is an epiphany, right? For all of us in communications industry. One day, we were all sitting in office, chit-chatting, and water cooler conversations were the way to communicate with our associates. And the next day we had no clue, right? I think that change is still happening, right? And I think the 3-4 things that we have tried to do in the new normal was we moved away from structured communication campaigns altogether, right? Because it was such an evolving landscape, right? Whether you're communicating to your own associates or to your customers, right? It was all about open, candid, unstructured conversations, spontaneous, engaging conversations, right? And 4-5 things that really helped us do that was one, and I know this sounds so fundamental, so basic, but we realized that in the times of pandemic, what really helped us sail through was go back to basics, right? And one of the fundamental lighthouses for us was our values first, and first in science definition, FIRST stands for fairness, integrity, respect, sincerity, and transparency. And that was demonstrated, acted upon, showed in every gesture and every action we took. I'll give you an example, right? In the middle of, I think our second wave of pandemic when it hit, right? We took a bold step of actually launching a gender neutral policy. Okay. And, while the entire industry is focusing on productivity and efficiency and effectiveness, we said, I think inclusion is not just about changing your logo color. Inclusion and culture is all about acting upon the promise that you make. So that's something I would say is act before you talk or walk before you talk, right, was our mantra. The second one, again, when we talk about it, when we talked about the holistic health, Kusum, was what do we mean by well-being of our associate, right? Were they encouraged to say that, yes, I'm not okay? And the first thing that we encouraged in our associates when we started off the entire initiative was, it's okay to be not okay, right? It's absolutely okay to be not okay, right? It's okay to fail. It's okay to break apart. It's okay to break down. There have been instances where I almost broke down. My entire team was down with COVID at one point in time. And while we had so much to do, I personally felt, so touched and so connected, and I felt like I really need to do something for them. For me, I think that's employer brand. So I'll not take too much of your time, Kusum, but that's in a nutshell what employer brand to me is all about.
Sure. No, it's interesting you mentioned about holistic wellness and the words, it's okay not to be okay. Our CEO, our global CEO, Piyush Gupta, just did last week a very interesting session for employees where he also sort of spoke about how it's okay not to be okay, and all of the stress that we've been sort of facing. So I guess the sentiment is similar across the board. Shubhendu, maybe you would want to share anything from your side in terms of what is some of the initiatives have you've been sort of driving, or your team has been driving around this.
Sure. Thank you, Kusum. I would echo a lot of things what Meenu just now said. The first thing which we realized in this pandemic is it is something which none of us had faced of that magnitude before. We did not know what to do. We didn't even know what causes this pandemic. I mean, what causes this disease? How far should we stay from somebody who already has it? Should we, how many times should we wash our hands? And it was chaos. Information was scarce. It was chaos. And every person at that point in time was an individual thinking about their families. That was it. I mean, company, work, everything on one side, family, well-being was on the other side. So we realized that in such a situation as an organization, we could understand that it is going to be very, very different. The leadership, whatever we have to demonstrate, it cannot be the same leadership which we demonstrated when things were normal. We talk about leadership in crisis times, right? So being a leader in a crisis, it's a totally different ballgame altogether. I'm sure all of us would have gone through that. Every organization has passed through this. And the best thing or the worst thing in times of crisis is that everything is volatile. The responsibilities are no longer, you cannot demarcate responsibilities. You cannot say that I'm a marketing person, I'm this much, corporate services, my job is to, do only this much. You cannot really put a line saying that, okay, this is where I stop. Leadership has to be, definitely strategic at all times. It has to be decisive. Clarity of thought has to be there. If as leaders, we are not taking very clear, concrete steps, then it sends out a very confusing message to the entire organization. So that's what, as an organization, we felt that definitely whenever we are talking to people, the first thing which has to be done is timely, and then transparent, and then clear communication. And if we are able to do just this, as a leader, if we are just able to communicate, what are things, first thing is that first worry about yourself, make sure that you are safe, make sure that you are taking care of, all of those hygiene practices. What should you do? What should you not do at home, at office, when you're moving out and all of that? So that's one. Second is, as you rightly said, Kusum, when you started the introduction, you were saying mental health. That is so important. A lot of organizations, even today, when we start the day, I start the day in the morning, probably around 10-ish. I end the day at around 10:30. So and I'm sure everybody in my team or in other teams within the organization will probably be having some similar kind of schedules. I speak to my cousins who are not even in my organization, but then they also have similar stuff. So the first thing which is needed in such times is that mental health has to be definitely taken care of. So at Signity, what we did was we had a mental health program. We augmented with more support. We set up a dedicated HR help desk within the organization. We set up a COVID helpline within the organization. We are tracking from those days itself. See, today things are, we have all taken our 2 vaccinations. We are kind of secure. We know that facilities are available. We have some kind of, hope within ourselves. At that time, some of these things were not available. In such a situation, when we had to, communicate, and we definitely had to bring in all resources together. We were thinking together as a team. The entire leadership team was thinking, what is it that we should do that people do not feel stressed out? They already are stressed out because some of the networks do not work. None of us were ready, right, to work from home. So sometimes network doesn't work. They're worried what the client would say. Everybody was at a different, so we have all seen the Gartner hype cycle, right? The technologies are at a different level. So the countries were at a different, stage of their acceptance or, of COVID. So understanding people was difficult. So we have done some of these steps, and trust me, the helpline really helped us a lot at that stage. We just had to be there for the people. We didn't have to, at that point in time, as Meenu rightly pointed out, we didn't think of, employer brand. I mean, because in fact, to be honest with you, since the last 1 year, my, presence in or my speaking at events was significantly almost near to zero, because I realized that this is not the time to, talk about some of these things. This is the time to do. If we can do something and can help, that is the best way, to spend that time. So yeah, so that's how I would put it.
Sure. And they say, right, your best brand ambassadors are your employees. And if they do feel touched, they do feel inspired by the leadership, they definitely, talk about it, share about it. Rosh, maybe I'll turn to you now. And so Shubhedu made an interesting point about doing clear communication in this time of ambiguity. I remember we were, when the first wave surpassed, and we were all very hopeful that it's all behind us, and we were trying to look at ways of opening office and getting people back to work before the unfortunate second wave hit us. And there was so much ambiguity. Every day we would decide, as the leadership team would deliberate as to what is the right time to get people back to Hyderabad, because obviously a lot of them were working remotely and it sort of moved down. So Rosh, maybe you could talk to us a bit about the role of your team or your function. How did that change during this time? Were you doing things differently? Were you doing things that were not part of the playbook as part of your job description typically? If you could maybe share a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Susam. It's good to be here. Thanks to NASCOM as well. Good evening, everyone. I think, a lot of what we went through was covered by Meenu and Shubhendu. I think our sentiments were pretty much in a similar vein. But, and we were lost. The first few weeks and months, we had no clue, right? We tried applying the usual, and the usual didn't work. And I think what helped us initially in those first few days was trust. We were hearing a lot about peers, larger and mid-size, who were affixing cameras to computers working from home, and so that they could see the employees, and they wanted to check as to how often the employee is logged on, etc. And we realized that trust is a very important element. So that's how we reinvented ourselves, right? We found our feet and said, hey, it's all about engagement. It's all about everyone's going through a tough time, including our team members. And if you start doubting them, etc., that doesn't help, right? So I think that trust factor helped a lot with collaboration, helped a lot with engagement. The engagement factor, got extremely high. And erstwhile corporate communication is typically around 70% communication, 30% engagement. What we really ended up doing was an entire communication through engagement, right? and various forms of engagement. And there were some platforms that we were struggling to get adoption on, whether it was, say, the chat audiovisual platforms, whether the internal social media platforms, the external social media platforms where we wanted to have our employee engage with us on. I think these were areas that were a bit of a stretch earlier. But the moment we started engaging with the employee, we started trusting the employee, we started making it all about the employee rather than the organization. And that whole thing where Virtusa Cares, incidentally, which was a movement within Virtusa, we saw a lot of feedback coming, saying, "Hey, listen, this is what we want, right? We want someone who's going to open a sort of a mental health care or a physical health care in the campus," which is what we ended up doing as well. We want someone who's going to support us through things like helplines and external agencies working on their areas of specialization, etc. I think the second area that we really focused on, and we spent a lot of time making sure it made sense for the employees, was reskilling, upskilling. We focused on soft skills, we focused on technical certifications, we focused on hackathons, live learning simulations, so many more. Employees wanted to do something beyond just work, right? And they had a little more time on hand and were willing to, to go that extra mile. So we found learning to be a sweet spot. We found CSR to be another sweet spot where we found employees, helping out for the pandemic or for directly or indirectly. So I think all of our communication, all of our focus was around collaboration, togetherness, well-being, and essentially a meaningful future to look forward to. Right? That's what the whole focus was about.
Sure. Thanks, Rosh. Interesting you mentioned that. You mentioned the point of CSR, because even at DBS, for instance, we ran a movement called Portraits of Purpose, which is essentially how we sort of define our CSR programs. And we did, you touched upon hackathons. DBS kind of takes a lot of pride in hiring through hackathons. We were probably one of the first here in the Hyderabad area where when we started hiring, we called it Hack to Hire. We did a program called Hack to Help, in fact, during both the years of pandemic, which we just concluded the second edition a couple of weeks ago, where we actually asked our employees to solve a technology problem which will help the community. So the first year, since there was a lot of ambiguity, there was a lot of need for creating solutions around support. How can you reach people, during the time of adversity, when they need vaccines, when they need medicines? How do you sort of develop apps around that? How do you develop apps for food distribution during the pandemic era, especially where people are quarantining, etc. In the second year, we were more focused, and we actually did a program, Act to Help 2.0, as we call it, in association with United Way of Hyderabad, where we actually devised an app which is going to help United Way of Hyderabad map skills for underprivileged youth to get them better employed. So to your point, I mean, yes, this was also an opportunity for us to kind of channelize that energy that people had while sitting at home, to do something more meaningful to the community. You also touched upon the tools around internal communication. That's perfectly, I think, a good segue for the next question I had in mind, which is, has the face of internal communication changed in the last 18 months? Because initially we used to do campaigns, or we used to push out EDMs. We would do, walks on the floor. There are screens in the office where you sort of relay your messages. But when it's all virtual, when it's all working from home, when people are even shy of turning their cameras on during video calls, how do you communicate? What did you guys do differently in order to just even the BAU communication, the internal communication with folks? If anyone of you would like to maybe touch a bit on that.
So I can go on this first.
Thanks.
A couple of things, Kusum. What you said is right. When you mentioned that, the ways in which channels using which we were reaching out to employees, that has definitely, changed, because we are not using the largest, asset, which was office space. we are no longer having access to that. So
Yeah.
and another thing is, so whenever you had things in the office, say suppose you printed a a banner or a brochure, you made a you put it,
Standee. Pull out.
from the ceiling, all of that. Those were there to just start a conversation. There are two people who may or may not have seen it. Somebody knows it more, somebody knows it less. They have that conversation. Here, when you are working, when you're working remotely, unless you really have some work with somebody, you would not ping that person. And so even if there is a mailer which has come in, unless there is somebody has to respond, people would not talk about it. The first thing which we thought was, rather than sending mailers or weekly, I mean, we do have that as well, but then the first change which we thought of having was to set up one-on-one calls with people. So HR rolled out HR Connect, which was org-wide, which we were not having on a very regular basis earlier, but then we realized the importance of that in the last 1.5 years. Two-way communication was really, really important. That was a void which we wanted to fill. And so all of the discussions, whichever we were having, they were small group discussions. We did not have very large town halls. We continued to have the way we used to have, but we definitely had smaller group discussions. Sometimes it was just the function heads. Sometimes it was just the design team. Sometimes it was just the in a particular COE or a particular community of practice. So that is one way which we started splitting the communication to start getting feedback from the employees. So yeah, that struck me when you were saying about this.
Sure, thanks. Meenu, would you want to also talk about that?
Yeah. So interestingly, because one realization or epiphany that we had was there's nothing called internal communication and external communication anymore. It's very integrated, intuitive communication, right? And one thing that really happened, thanks to the pandemic, is all the functional barriers were broken, right? There was nothing called an HR team or a marketing team or a finance or a delivery or operations or finance, right? We became this COVID response team, right? And we had core task force where we had functional spokes, right? So we created the immediate response team was the CRT, which was across the world, divided into smaller groups who would reach out to the associates. The second team, which we started to create, is as people were recovering from COVID, the post-COVID rehabilitation team. People had issues about simple, so the 3 I's that we focused on when we were rolling this program out was people were looking for infrastructure, financial, social, people, medical infrastructure. Second was people were looking for relevant information, right? That's the second I. And the third was people who were young and they're healthy and they want to do something. They're looking for inspiration to help out. I think those were the 3 pillars of our communications across the board. And post-COVID rehabilitation, as I told you, after that, we also created, again, a cross-functional leadership team where, for example, a case in point, your typical loan approval processes, right, would take longer, right? We had on-the-spot loan approval windows that we created, right? Our leaders across the world kind of contributed and co-funded and co-created. Believe it or not, the beauty of this was many a times we have seen our key customers coming together, right, and working with us as one team. I mean, that's, if you ask me, is the integrated communication. And believe it or not, Kusum, we were absolutely transparent and, again, hats off to our values first with our customers on what's happening on ground, how we are helping our own associates, and what's the reality. I think that's absolutely the I would say the strategy or the approach that we took. And when it comes to inspiration, I think 3-4 areas which we took on as a challenge, thanks to our own kind of skills and expertises. So we actually manufactured India's first RT-PCR kit, portable RT-PCR kit, and while all this was happening, we realized people need inspiration, people need positive vibes. So while all this was happening, we went all out at the NASSCOM ER&D Awards last year, right? And we said people need to celebrate their innovation and their hard work. And that was one of the solutions that actually won the Social Impact Solution of the Year at NASSCOM. So I think that's the spirit, right? I think we all waded through, we all sailed through, but it couldn't have been possible without integrated communication, right? I think there was nothing called internal, external, if you ask me.
Yeah, true. I mean, the lines are blurred for all of us. I totally agree with that. But tell me, how does the new normal now look like? Now that we're talking about returning to work, offices are being open. I'm sitting out of my office today. Just wanted to sort of get the feel of being back in office after a while, and also obviously the network. But it's actually so good to be back in office while there are not many people around. Just the feel of being in office, the routine of getting dressed in the morning and coming to work. So now that we are sort of looking at that, what role do you see us as corporate communications, as brand managers play in facilitating that transition of return to work? Rosh or Meenu, do you want to start for that?
Let Rosh take it up, no issue.
Rosh,
No,
please,
you go first, after you.
Okay,
Sorry.
I think I'm going to point the speaker next time.
No worries. No, I will just say 2 lines on this, and I would love to hear Rosh's thoughts as well on this. I think the new normal is all about experience first, right? It really doesn't matter where you are, in office, on the road, at client location, remote location. I think it's all become experience first, right? So as long as our communication is centered around experiences, we are good. Right. I mean, I always tell people you can have the fanciest of the website, but when your associates walked into your building, how many questions does your security guard ask you? Right. For me, that's experience. And that's far more important than the fancy look and feel on the website. Right. So that was it from my side. Rosh, over to you.
No, absolutely. I echo the same point, Meenu. I think a sharp focus on the employee experience, right, across the employee life cycle is something that makes a lot of sense. A lot of is very relevant, and to aid that, help that experience, I think continuous innovation, with your with how you engage with your employees, your current employees, and your prospective potential employees as well. I think that's something that is very important. You need to relook at your brand toolkits, your platforms, your modus operandi means of engagement on a monthly basis now, because things are changing so fast, and there's no way you can say this format is good for the rest of the year. So I think the whole focus on creating and sustaining a collaborative peer learning, coffee machine conversation kind of bonding culture which we had at office. How do you replicate that, with what we call as, the office at home, right? Because that's what we've been doing. While people are returning to office, it's not going to be the entire organization. Yeah. It's always going to be a certain percentage before the. I don't think the entire organization, in general, from an industry point of view, is going to really. You're not going to have entire organizations return to office. So this is the new normal, and how can we innovate and change with this new normal? Keep ahead of it.
Yeah. And I think when you touched upon Rosh, the new normal and the new platform. I'm sure all of you must be also experiencing. All of a sudden now, the internal social media adoption has gone up by a notch, because everybody wants to have those informal conversations, right? People have fatigue over webinars and structured informal dialogues, correct?
Yeah. That's true.
Absolutely.
Right. Shubhendu, would you want to add something to what Rosh was talking about?
See, I completely agree to what Rosh was mentioning. See, when we are talking about a change in the way we communicate, the first focus definitely has to be towards what gives them a celebratory feel, what gives them a joy of association. I feel that, I think Meenu was saying that right? They went on to NASSCOM, things needed to be celebrated, it was all gloom all around. And then you have to find those instances, those small wins or big wins, whichever, you look at it, whichever way. But unless you celebrate that, that is, that's not going to, help. So in Signity, we name our rewards and recognition program as Celebrating You. Interestingly named, Celebrating You. So the core essence of the, the philosophy of the award program is that we celebrate the intent, not only the outcomes. Outcomes, will always happen whenever the intent is right. So Celebrating You is nothing but celebrating the intent. And so some of that started more often on a remote basis. And, in fact, in one of our team discussions, when we were discussing that all of the new people are joining in, right? There was one person who joined my team probably around June, July timeframe last year. He exited because of a family situation. He had to move on, and he exited this June, July. So he didn't even see the office. So how do you first of all, see, two things. It's such a critical thing, because there are people who are joining you. They have not been part of the culture yet. They have seen what you are made of. How can you live the culture when you are not living in the culture? So the culture is at the office. So if you want to, take the culture of your brand and, instill that into people, a lot of things have to be taken care of. And in that, the first thing is that you have to have a sense of accomplishment, sense of belongingness. So more than individual awards, if you are thinking of more team awards, where people are speaking to each other more, like, you are shelling out more, saying, this is the best performing team of the quarter, something like that. Then, that sense of feeling, even though somebody is working from Indore, or somebody is working from, Calcutta or Bhubaneswar or, Bangalore, you would still have all of them, speaking to each other, knowing that, okay, we won, we have to do it together, so that sense of togetherness has to come in. And I believe that's the reason why we focus clearly on joy as the theme and celebration as the theme, and we got that right. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to add.
And Shubhendu, you are so spot on how to get people belong to the brand without being in the brand. I'm a classic example. I joined Cyient as a chief marketing officer on June 1st. Okay. Right when, the lockdown was getting over and we are in like the pandemic communication programs. And I'm like, if I can do this, right? And if I can feel belonged, I can feel connected, I can feel imbibed and living the culture and living the values, I think we can make this work, right? So absolutely. I think that is a Herculean task in front of us. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, a lot of, like Shubhendu was mentioning, a lot of colleagues who were virtually onboarded during the pandemic, there are teams who worked relentlessly at the back end, ensuring their laptops were delivered, ensuring they had a very seamless experience that we were talking about earlier in the conversation, despite not having those touch points when you walk into your office on day one and you sort of meet and greet people. But at the same time, we also saw during this last 18 months, a lot of people leaving the organizations for various reasons, mostly personal because of pandemic related stress or the fact that they could not cope up with being in the same city as their office was. They had to go and tend to their parents. In fact, one of the biggest reasons for us as far as attrition is concerned has been the fact that a lot of people wanted to stay in their hometowns. When they started thinking about coming back to work, they realized that probably it doesn't make sense for them to move to another city anymore after what they saw during the pandemic. The whole focus on the family aspect of life is also kind of heightened for all of us, I'm sure. So what next now in terms of attracting the right talent? Now that we know that mobility is going to be a challenge for some people. Also, we're also increasingly seeing this trend of people moving for higher salaries because suddenly the sort of pay ranges in the industry are exploding for some reason, especially in the fintech space. I can talk about that from experience. But so what role do we play as communications or brand managers to sort of make sure that the right talent gets attracted and for the right reasons?
If I can go first, Kusum. Interestingly, we have all seen across the entire IT, ER&D technology space the waging war on talent, right? Devjani had mentioned in one of her speeches that there is a dearth of 6 million digital workers worldwide, right? So clearly there is going to be a war on talent. There is already a war on talent. I'm not sure if I'll be politically right to say this, but I have seen dime a dozen brands trying to woo candidates with the fanciest and the most attractive of the goodies. Okay. The mantra that we have followed at Scient brand is goodness beyond goodies. Okay. Is if you plan to join an organization for a meaningful career, short, long, in India, wherever, doesn't matter. Right? We are the ones for you. If you're looking to learn and grow, we are the ones for you. But if you're looking for the fanciest goodies, I'm not even running that race. I'm not interested. Right? So you would hardly see anything on social media from Scient where somebody's flaunting, okay, I got this really fancy iPad, or I got this fancy headphones, or I got this fancy car for that matter. Right? Yes, those are important. They are incentives. They are beautiful symbols and gestures. But what after that, right? After that, you got to live with the brand. After that, you got to live with the people that you joined, right? I think that's been one of the areas that we have found very, very useful for us to attract talent. And you're absolutely right, Kusum. Today talent is ready to shift brands, to move brands and have multiple job offers in their hand, correct? But I must tell you that most of the talent out there, which is shifting and shipping, they're very intelligent. They know, there are so many instances where I've seen where people said, you know what, Meenu, I think that brand is offering higher salary, the person will go there. I said, bet on it. He or she will not. Right? And if he or she is, probably not the right talent. Right? So I think it's very, very important for us to introspect what you stand for and what you can actually offer the talent. Right? That learning and that authenticity is very important, right?
Would you also say that for the millennials, perhaps? Because that's one trend that we're seeing, that millennials are kind of shifty in their mindset. It kind of takes them a while to understand what the company has to offer.
Yeah. And that's where communication plays a part, Kusum. Gone are the days, where once you have offered the candidate, there's a radio silence till the time you join. Correct? There is so much of communication possible from the time that you first got the call from the recruiter or from the headhunter, from the organization to the time you joined. In fact, a lot of cultural induction should happen between that time, because anyway, the person is going to join your organization virtually. So how will you make them feel brand? I think it's a beautiful communication opportunity.
Sure. Rosh, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, the entire experience, right, that a candidate goes through is extremely important because as we all know, there are so many options available and a candidate doesn't make a decision based on, the salary, the remuneration and the title. I think those are all passé. That's a given, right? It is about the experience. It is about the references. 9 out of 10 times you find a candidate talking to, an employee within your organization. Hey, how is it there? What is it like? And we found that the measures that the initiatives that we've put out in the last 18 months have really helped, with getting a good reference, right? Things like, hey, these guys took care of me during COVID, or, they were able to deploy funds for when I got COVID within 24 hours, or mental health or support or whatever it was. All of these get shared with the candidate when they're joining, and most importantly, in our case, the whole learning and development efforts get called out, and we seem to be a magnet training ground of sorts when it comes to getting talent on board.
I think.
Yeah, I think it's. Go on, Shubhendu, please.
No, please go ahead, Krishna. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, I was just adding to Rosh's point that, it's been a similar experience for us at DBS. Also, we actually went through an entire integration during the pandemic. We acquired a LVB bank, as you all know, and the entire integration of a bank, which was a legacy systems, where some of the people didn't even probably have access to chat tools and computers full time. Kind of integrating that whole communication, ensuring that they're on board. At the same time, they feel included and respected was a Herculean task. And I completely agree with you, Rosh, when you say that I think the stickiness perhaps comes in from the fact that the employees feel valued in an organization. The amount of effort they see the company making to make sure that they are okay, make sure that them and their families are kind of taken care of during an adverse time like this, perhaps brings in that sense of belonging that we were just earlier sort of talking about. So I think it's pretty much been the similar journey for us at DBS as well. Sorry, Shubhendu, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, Shubhendu, I'll just make a quick point. I think what has helped us really, and it was something we weren't really taking seriously prior to the pandemic, right? At Virtusa, we have something called Pearl values: passion, innovation, respect, and leadership. And okay, that was something that you had to, corporate communication put out once every quarter, and it was more lip service to the Pearl values. But really, during the pandemic, I think the Pearl values acted as a lighthouse for employees, and that helped stay truthful and honest to our endeavors and the employee first agenda.
True.
Yeah, so I would just add on to a couple of things. So first thing is that we were looking at candidates. We are looking at candidates today very, very differently than we used to do before. The candidates are getting the kind of attention which probably employees have not received. I would say that we are looking at, earlier we had customer experience, which we talked about, employee experience, which we talked about, now candidate experience, which is a totally new term. 5 years back, I never came across candidate experience as a term which was going to be so popular, that everyone would be, and we in this forum would be talking about. This is a forum of marketers. We are talking about candidate experience. That itself tells volumes about the importance of the subject. So before even a candidate becomes an employee, everyone today wants to touch and feel and see, because as Minu said, people have multiple offers, and they have social media. They have, they can reach out to anybody. Now the accepted mode of communication is through LinkedIn. People accept connection invites openly. People respond to questions from people. So everybody can reach out to anybody. So, there was this WhatsApp forward, I think one day back, which I was going through, where it was a fun forward, which said that the recruiter is asking the person that, can we reach out to your previous employer to know about you more, and the reason and how you were working there. And the person replies saying that, sure, why not? And then, can I also reach out to your previous employees to know why they quit? So it's fun. It was a short clip, but it clearly says that candidates have that power today. And so as a marketer, we have to ensure that we talk about flexibility. Minu also touched upon one other thing. I'm not in that race. People have crazy offers these days. We cannot really meet all of them, and that's not practically feasible to do it over a consistently longer period of time. It's not possible. So the only way is to think, what is it that I am going to give to this person when he comes in? And is it learning? Is it career growth? Is it responsibility? Is it greater exposure to a lot of new things which he was not doing before? So a lot of that. And then we did all of this thinking, Kusum, and we started thinking, what is our, and what are some of those things, small things, which we can do in different areas, that it will actually add up into one large, big, different, pleasant experience. And then we started thinking that, okay, whenever there are people, the first thing is that we respect people's time. If the interview is set up at 4 o'clock, we are ensuring that the person who is going to take the interview is at least logging in 2 minutes before, just to let the candidate know that we value your time. This is a very small thing. I mean, it's like normal. This is what is new in this. But then it is, as a candidate, when you log in and you see the recruiter is already there, you have a different thought about the company altogether. So not just that, when we say that we will come back to you, or they are working on an assignment, we want to evaluate them, we clarify clearly that who is going to do that. Who is going to evaluate, who's going to come back to you, by what date. We try to stick to that date. Now there is this book called Atomic Habits, which really inspires me, which says that if you do very small incremental changes to different processes over a significantly larger period of time, they will add up to something which is very, very different and obviously welcome change. So that's what I would say, that because all of this is happening, now we are trying to see how can we take each of these smaller moments of truth with the candidates and fix them or make them better, so that candidates, before even they experience the company, they get a sneak preview.
Yeah, true. I mean, I completely agree. Every touch point matters. And we had almost five or maybe more virtual hackathons. A hackathon in office or at an external venue is an experience. Candidates come, they experience the hospitality over a day or two. There is overnight, jamming sessions happening. This is so much fun that sort of there's energy in the room when a hackathon is happening. And to take all of that into a virtual format and being able to engage candidates was an experience and a lot of learning in all, for all of us, including some of our HR colleagues. So I completely agree. Every small incremental change in the way you deliver that experience to your candidates, and for that matter to your employees, matters. I think we're running out of time, but probably just one last round of question to everyone here. What are your top 3 learnings from the last 18 months as communications persons, as brand persons? Maybe if we could just sort of shed a bit of light on that, and then we can, I think we do have a few questions in the window as well. We'll see if we have the time to take those. I don't know, Rosh, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, I think the top 3 are employees, and employees, right? It's all about listening to them rather than you having an agenda and you having a plan. And once you understand what the trend and the inflection point, you get your sweet spot. I think that's clearly a learning for us, and everything now revolves around the experience, the employee experience, how we can innovate with this whole employee experience, and how not to replicate what the office at home per se, but replicate the good parts of the office at home, the fun parts, right? As I mentioned earlier about the coffee and water cooler conversations. How do we do that when a person's working at home? So innovation, experience, and I think the informal collaboration is what would be a 3 learnings for us.
Sure, thanks. Shubhendu?
I would say that belongingness. If we are able to, because we'll all be in this virtual hybrid format, I would say that would be much better. We are going to be in this format for quite some time. And so if, as a marketer, if we are able to increase belongingness within all of the people we are working with, then the role of a marketer will be done by the employees themselves as, as becoming the brand ambassadors. If they are able to do that on their own, that is the best marketing, best employer brand, because a marketer can only control, what kind of posts go into social media, what kind of posts go into, mailers and all of that. But, that intent, celebrating that intent, right? When you are celebrating the intent of the employee and then making them feel that sense of belongingness for the company, they become your own brand ambassadors. That's the key learning which we have. So all of our actions, all of the steps which we are taking are towards increasing that belongingness towards the organization. Virtual.
Right. Sure. Meenu, over to you, last but not the least.
I would say the top 3 learning personally for me, purely from the framework of associate experience or talent experience, has been listen, listen, and listen. There are so many times we get carried away as marketers, that, okay, somebody in the organization or somebody in the competition is doing a celebrity webinar on every Friday evening. And I'm like, you know what? But my associate need time out. They need to spend time with their family. They don't need to listen to Tom Cruise. They need to check on their kids and their wives and their mothers and their daughters. I think those are true calls that you need to take as, communication and experience specialist, right? Second is, it is no longer about controlled communication at all. There is nothing called controlled communication. It's all about encouraged communication, right? I think that's the second learning. And the third is, there's nothing called plan anymore. I remember when I joined, somebody asked me, what's your blueprint for the pandemic communications? And I'm like, if you have one, please let me know, because I don't, right? So ready to learn every morning from anybody in the system, right? Those are the 3 learnings I would say, Kusum.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, given how things have been ambiguous, chaotic, I think learning and unlearning every day seems like a new day. I mean, there's no template that you can follow anymore. I completely agree with that. Okay, we probably just have 5 more minutes. Shrivani, do you want to take some questions meanwhile, or do you want me to pick a few?
Sure, I'm just looking at the window. I think Meenu has responded to a question. They wanted to know how Yammer is working in your organization. You're using something like Yammer. Saujanya is asking, we are losing peer-to-peer learning and taking longer time to respond from one to another. Internal branding activities are entirely missing. How are you overcoming this?
Yeah, I think internal branding is an important topic, that's being touched upon here, because the experience of seeing, feeling, touching things in office, talking to your colleagues, celebrating festivals together, celebrating birthdays together, I think that human touch point is kind of missing. As much as we try, we have something called as Pop Fridays, where we do portraits of purpose. We do like 1 hour of volunteering and we do 1 hour of fun and celebration and all of that. And we do it in smaller groups. We do virtual coffee sessions like everybody else, I'm sure, with the leadership team. But then again, there is that connect that's sort of missing. And probably that's what people are missing now in terms of, being able to come back to work. But if any of the other panelists would want to talk about, what do you think we can do to sort of overcome this challenge of having people to respond faster, or the internal branding opportunities?
I think one way, one learning or lesson that I have had, everyone in Sochanya, I don't think so we have a solution. If we all had a solution, we would have written books on it. But I can share our lessons is we have pretty much tried to stop one-way communication. Okay, it is not about broadcasting. It is not about just informing. If you cannot have a dialogue, think. Okay, whether it's a dialogue with your CEO or with your manager or with your peer, because most of the learning happens in unstructured dialogues, right? You can't orchestrate that, you can't stage it. So I think that's been one of the lessons. Shubhendu, Rosh, over to you.
I think where internal branding is concerned, in a small way, we're trying to overcome, right? And we have these days, whether, as Kusum rightly said, it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, and we've actually gone to the calendar and listed what are the possible world days you can choose and pick and choose from, and we take a few and think. But I don't think that really helps. It addresses the issue. However, what we found is employees love to share recognition, and that is another form of internal branding, right? Whether it's a certification or whether it's an appreciation or an award or anything of that sort. And that's something that or an acknowledgement, tenure complete, someone joining. I think that's helped us. We also have a welcome kit for employees, which have branded items, merchandise, and that's another sort of direct form of internal branding that we try and do.
And Rosh, just to add, what we have done in Signity is a lot of these blogs and white papers and collaterals which we were creating earlier was, we were getting limited responses from, the larger organizations. Now what we are doing is all of the folks who are contributing towards creating some of those collaterals, we are celebrating that by sending out corp comms, and so that they inspire others. And, that's a booster for them and also for the rest of the team. Marketing also continues to get a lot of, content as always. So works well for everybody. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I'm going to probably tap onto you offline on this one, Shubhendu, because I'm struggling to get good content internally. We're trying to do, sort of turn the next leaf in terms of being able to market ourselves as a world-class engineering organization, especially the Hyderabad Center.
Okay.
We call it DBS Asia Hub 2. And we're looking at, since there's so much technology talent in-house, but we're looking at good content that we can sort of market, in terms of podcasts or white papers or blogs and so on. And how do you really tap into that energy of people? Because everybody has ideas, but they're kind of shy of putting those ideas onto, in a format that you can use to market. So probably I will touch base with you offline on how you're doing that. But that's interesting to know. Great. I think we're almost on time. Any last thoughts, any questions, Srivani, that you see in the window that I may have missed?
No, nothing we've missed.
I think there is a question that just came on.
Posted, how to build a culture in startups where most of work is done by the CEO and 4 and other C-level employees. Again, get skilled people to manage work is challenging, considering, This is more on startup.
More of a startup thing.
Whether, I just want to make one small point here. Whether it's a startup or a mid-size enterprise or a global MNC, right? Again, one learning that I've had working with some of the respected brands and organizations in my career is that culture is how you walk, talk, and behave in your individual conversations, right from the chairman level. I think that's how culture is reinforced and activated, right? Culture is not about your brochures and danglers and banners and web pages, right? If my CEO opens the door for everybody who enters the room, that becomes a culture, right? That's about sincerity and the respect that we do in action, correct? It doesn't matter how many brochures and pamphlets you do it, but if people don't do it, if people don't act upon it, it doesn't become culture. As we rightly say that values translated into action becomes culture, right? So that's my closing thought.
Very, very nicely put, Meenu. Very nicely put. I completely agree. And whenever, and I have worked with startups. I have worked with startups when there were probably 100 employees, grew to about 800, 900 when I moved on. But I have seen that whenever you are a small team, every one of you as the core founding members have that, responsibility to really put together those things which matter to you. Does meritocracy matter to you? Or does hard work matter to you? Does innovation matter to you? Whatever matters to you, what are you trying to do as the leaders of the organization? How do you lead by example? The person who comes in, he's just, as Meenu said, if the CEO opens the door for the person who is coming in, that speaks volumes, and then he or she has to keep the door open for the person who is coming next. So as founders of the organization, you have to think what really excites you, what is it that powers you, and how do you pass that on? Once you pass that on, it will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It will definitely take time. But I have seen these things happen. I have been part of multiple startups actually, and I have seen all of that, happen in due course. So I think you should just stay focused on what you want to do and want to build.
Yeah. Also, I think being on the same page is important. If there are 4, 5, 6 people for them to have an aligned thought process in terms of what the organization stands for is all the more important, than in a larger setup where people could have different point of views, but as long as in their thought process they're aligned to this one vision of the company that they want to create or they want to shape, I think that's, to my mind, a good starting point to build a lasting culture. Okay, I think we are good on time. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. A great way to spend coffee time on a working day, but I really had a fun time moderating this panel, and I'm sure you all enjoyed this too. And thank you, NASSCOM and Shivani, for facilitating this for us.
Thank you. Thank you,
And thanks
everybody,
for
for your
everyone.
time. Thank you.
Thanks for
for your
everyone.
Thank you,
for your
everyone.
time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
I have a quick announcement to make before we close. So we have planted gift trees on your behalf in the state of Telangana as a small gesture for your time. I will share the QR codes with all of you. So you can just scan the QR code and you can view the plantation. This is something we've started doing recently. And I think this is more valuable than a gift.
Absolutely.
Like, materialistic thing.
That's exactly the goodness beyond goodies I'm referring to. Thank you, Shiva.
Thank you. So I'll share those codes with you soon. And I think everybody is also thanking you on the chat window. Thank you, all of you, for holding the fort for your organization in terms of branding and communication. I know it's taken time, but I think people now realize the importance of what you do other than the regular job, because the pandemic, I'm sure, has put a lot of us in a different light. And thank you again. Thank you for your time. We look forward to host you again soon. Do you want to say anything before we close?
Thank you, Shivani.
No. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.